Okay, so listen, excuse the messy bookshelves. I am in the process of figuring out what books I want to unhaul and then figuring out what to do with them. So I'm going to be doing the 2020 survey. I did one last year and it flopped, but I have better hope for myself this because I read a lot of books and I want to talk about all the books that I read, and I think that you guys will be interested in what I read this year. I do not know why. This is the actual tag. I don't really do tags that often anymore, but if you want to do this, like, feel free to do this. I actually encourage you to do this. I think this is so fun. Gabby Reed did this and I had so much fun watching her video. The first question is, how many books did you read and did you meet your goal? So I read 200 books this year. Yes, 200 books, and my goal was 50 books. I purposely set my goal at 50 books because I know that I could read 50 books in a year. Like, basically what I do for myself is I literally set the bare minimum so that when I get above the bare minimum, I can be proud of myself. This is what happens when your mom thinks that everything you do is great no matter what you do. So you do the bare minimum and then you're happy with whatever you get. So the most read drama is romance, but who's shocked? The longest and shortest books you read. So before, my shortest book was the sequel to The Raven and the Dove, which was like The Princess and the Pawn. But then I read The Drowning Faith, which is the novella for The Burning Gods. You only got it if you pre-ordered the book. The Drowning Faith was 15 pages. I read it and it was about Naza, my favorite character. I love Naza so much. Like, I know a lot of people hate him. I don't care. He's my bae. He's my king. He is just special to me, okay? I love the Poppy War. I haven't read The Burning God yet. I will be reading it in 2021 because I wanted January to just be a really good reading year, because January is such a long freaking month for me. So I just wanted to make sure that my January was just filled with good books, because I know I'm going to be like dreading the month. And then the longest book that I have is The Queen of Air and Darkness, and this was 912 pages. I really wanted to read a 1,000-page book this year, but this is not happening. And I flew through this book because my favorite thing about Cassandra Clare is that I read them in like hours because the words are humongous on the page. Like, her audiobooks will be like 30 hours long and you can finish the book in just like a day or so because the words on the page are freaking huge. So the next question is favorite published book in 2020, and if you guys have been a viewer of my channel for a while, you would know that I am absolutely obsessed with Deadly Education. I even got my sister Jada to read it and she even gave it 5 stars. Got my bestie Jocelyn to read it and she even gave it 5 stars. We like the same genre, so I wasn't surprised when she liked it, but I was so surprised when Jada liked it because she is so picky. Like, you think I'm picky? My sister is so freaking picky, and I love that about her because I know that when she reads a book that's good, like, I know it's good. And she gave it 5 stars, y'all. Like, 5 stars for my sister. That's all I gotta say. And the next question is best debut book of 2020, and that is The Black Kids. I read this book once, and if you know me, you know that I never tab books that I read for the first time. So I read The Black Kids, and this book was, oh, I forgot to explain what these books were about. I'm so sorry. But The Black Kids is basically about this girl who has white friends, and she grew up basically living like a whitewashed life. Like, she's actually the richest out of all of her friends, but they kind of treat her like poo-poo, and they say very like low-key racist things to her. And there is a riot going on in her town, and the black kids at her, she's like kind of experiencing this thing because her sister gets her involved with it. And I really loved it, and I love the romance. Like, the romance could have went either way, and I love the way that it ended up going. Like, I love the romance, and I think that this book is so important. Like, at first I didn't want to pick up this book. It's so much more than black trauma. It doesn't really have a lot of black trauma in it at all. It's literally just this main character realizing that she is black and that is important. It's just her coming into her own skin. What's your favorite book not published this year? And that would have to be Middle Game. I gave Middle Game 5 out of 5 stars. This book was recommended to me by Jocelyn. I mentioned her in like every single one of my videos. Like, y'all know that's my bestie. So this book was recommended to me by Jocelyn, and this book is about these 2 twins named Roger and Dodger who were separated at birth, and then they could kind of talk to each other through their mind. They call it a quantum entanglement. I don't even know how I remember that. Like, that's such a big word for me. I know it's not really a big word, but it was such a big word for me to remember. Like, a girl can barely remember small words, so the fact that I remember quantum entanglement says a lot. So they have a quantum entanglement, which is literally just they are able to talk to each other, and they don't know that they're twins. And so throughout the book, they're just that they have these special powers. Roger is the boy, I believe, and he is good with like spelling and English and stuff like that. And then Dodger is the girl, and she's good with math. And it's literally just you following these twins. I still have no idea what alchemy is. People have tried to explain to me 50 million times, and I still don't get it. And I don't care, because I didn't enjoy the book for that. Like, I enjoyed the book because I love the book, and I didn't care about the romances, but I love the plot and I love the characters. And that is what I mean when I say that books need to have plot and characters for me to enjoy it, because I ate this book up. Like, it was just so good. I just realized that in my last video I was wearing the same print. So when I'm wearing the same print in 2 videos in a row, that's just great. A book that lived up to the hype, and that would have to be Cemetery Boys. Everyone was hyping this book out. It came out in like September, and everyone was hyping it up, and I saved this book for Halloween, and I do not regret anything. This book is about a young boy named Yadriel, and he is a Brujo, and he wants to prove to his family that he can be a real Brujo because he is trans. And then he ends up discovering that the school's bad boy is dead, and he thinks that somehow it correlates to something that's going on in his town, because his cousin also turns up dead the same day. So they basically are going on this adventure. It's not really an adventure, but they basically go on this adventure to find out what happened. And the bad boy and Gadriel just have my heart, and I love them as characters so much, and they were so funny, and it just made me so happy that Yadriel could find someone that he could talk about being trans with. I just love that Yadriel could just talk about his issues and like feel safe, basically. The next question is a book that did not live up to the hype, and for that book I would have to say Addie LaRue. If you have been a subscriber to my channel for a minute, you will know that I hated Addie LaRue. I didn't hate it. It was a good book. Actually, I just gave it 2 stars because to me it was promoted as a girl falling in love with a devil, and that's literally not what this book was. And I feel like, I know that this was V.E. Schwab's passion project, but I just did not like it. I noticed that V.E. Schwab has a lot of not like other girl characters, and I noticed it in Vicious, and I was just like, okay, that could just be the character. Then I noticed it in A Darker Shade of Magic, and I was like, okay. And it's a big reason why I don't really know if I'm going to be finishing the series for a while, because I just cannot stand the main character. And I read Addie LaRue, and it wasn't as evident as her other books, but if you read her other books and then you read this, like, you see a pattern. And I also don't really think that V.E. Schwab knows how to write romance that well, and I don't really mean that in a mean way. I just don't think that she knows how to write romance. Like, I just did not enjoy the romance at all, and I did not like the ending, and this book just wasn't for me, and that's fine. A book that felt like your biggest accomplishment, and I will have to say Crescent City. This was the longest book I've ever read, and it's not even 1,000 pages. Like, Queen of Air and Darkness had more pages than this, and it took me like 10 hours to read, maybe. This book literally took me so long to freaking read, and it took me 9 days to read this book. 9 days. That is the biggest accomplishment I've ever made in my life. Like, not even going to college and like getting my first job. Like, reading this book was my biggest first accomplishment ever, because so if you don't know what Crescent City is, it's Sarah J. Maas book. And don't read the synopsis, because the synopsis does give a big spoiler, but something happens to the main character, and there's like this mystery going on. It's like it's not like a mystery thriller or anything like that, but like she has to like find out what's going on, and she has to work with this angel. It's a pretty good book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Favorite book character, and that would have to be Poppy from Blood and Ash. I loved Poppy. I thought she was a baddie. My favorite characters are always the baddies, but not the ones who like tell you they're a baddie but don't show you. Like, she literally was a baddie. She was vulnerable. I really love when baddie characters are vulnerable and they're not a baddie 24/7, and they don't have to be strong 24/7. She was vulnerable, and she was unique. Like, she had a scar above her eye, and she always had to wear a veil, and I just thought she was a really unique character. And she was funny, and the romance in this book was so good. If you don't know what Blood and Ash is about, it's about this girl who is made to ascend, and so she has to be kept pure. You ascend, you basically become immortal, and she is like the only one of her specific kind left. Least favorite book character. I am actually unhauling this book. I have the second, I hated it. But whatever the main character name that started with an E. What was her name? Elena. I cannot stand her. I thought she was so boring. Corian, I loved him, but he just didn't get enough attention. And then in the second book, I know that he gets his own chapters, but it wasn't coming soon enough for me, to be honest. I had to read through them other bitches and they was boring. You have the main character, Elena, and basically this book is about two queens, 100 years or a bunch of years apart, and it's basically just about how their life connects, which I kind of figured out how their life connects. Like, it's really not that hard to figure out, but whatever. Yes, about these two queens and their different reigns. And I just thought that Eliana, whatever the fuck her name is, I thought that she was so boring. Her love interest was boring. She was so annoying, so whiny. And Queen Riel was a literal queen. She had the best, like, mystery love interest. How the book started off was very interesting to me. But the book just fell flat. So not only is this my least favorite book, but it's also my least favorite character. Most shocking book or book moment, and that would have to be Crave. I read Crave, and it has a few tabs in it. I read this book and I ate it up. I gave it like 3 stars. Usually when I give a book 3 stars, I usually don't finish in the series. I don't know why, but it's just like, oh, the book was okay, but like I'll finish in the future, and then in the future it never comes. So it's not something I do on purpose. It's literally just me never getting to the book. But this book was so good. This book is about, because I really need to read the second book. This book was actually so freaking good. Like, it's basically about this girl, and she is moving to Alaska because her parents passed away. So she is moving to Alaska with her uncle who runs this boarding school. So she is roomed with her cousin. And she starts to realize that this school is like really, really weird. And that the people in the school are just weird. School itself is just weird, and she ends up becoming infatuated with like the school's like bad boy or popular boy. I forget which one he is, but whatever. And this book was it was so fun. Like, sometimes books are meant to be nothing more than just fun. Like, sometimes books don't have to be this like life-changing thing or like the most biggest plot. Like, this book was just fun, and I had fun while reading it. So this book was just so shocking to me because it's a YA paranormal book, and I don't really think that I would enjoy those now. Like, as an adult, I don't think that I would enjoy YA paranormal books, especially because I didn't grow up reading those. Like, I'm now starting to read the ones that I should have been reading when I was a teenager. So that's why, the main reason why I didn't think I would like it. But I actually ended up eating this book up, so that's why it's shocking to me. The next book is Favorite Couple / OTP, and I realized that I never really care about couples when I'm reading books. Like, I either want to be with the main male characters, or I'm just like, oh, they were cute. But this book, I had to get the physical copy of this book, and you know a romance is good when I have to get the physical copies because I don't own that many physical copies of like new adult romances. But this book is called The Villain, and it is the second book in the Boston Belle series following the first book, The Hunter. And this book basically, I read this book this month. It's going to be in my December wrap up. This book basically follows this guy, and his name is Killian, and he is the brother of the main character in the Hunter series. And he basically he's taking over his family company, and he has to marry this girl named Percy. It is a why did I say Percy? I meant Persephone. It is a Persephone / Hades retelling, but also I feel like any Persephone and Hades retelling also was like Beauty and the Beast retelling, low key. I think the Beauty and the Beast is retelling of Perseus and Perseus. God damn, Persephone and Hades. I always thought that was like retelling, anyways. But I thought that the couple was so good in this book. I think that LJ Shin really put her foot up in this fucking book, because this book was unlike any other book that I read by her. Like, all of her other books they had a format. You could tell they had a format. Like, the main character would get together, she wouldn't like him, they would end up dating somehow. Not dating, but like messing around. And then the non-communicating scene that always happens in every romance. And then he would get redemption, and then they would get together. And like, I just stopped caring. But I think it's because all the books that I read at that time came out. The Hunter is so much different. And then I read The Villain because I liked The Hunter. And I thought that The Villain was so good because he's like the CEO. He has no heart. He's a pessimist. Like, he just doesn't believe in love. And he also has this secret, which you find out in the book. He's the oldest out of his siblings, so he has to lead by example. He also runs the company, so he has to lead by example. And this is what my room looks like, not zoomed in. I do not remember what I was saying because my camera overheated and then my DoorDash came, so I ate. But The Villain, I really enjoyed this series. I really enjoyed this book. The best written book you read this year. And so, shockingly, I'm gonna have to say, added LaRue. Like, I can't lie. Writing in this book was spectacular. Like, I did hate this book, but I can give props where props are due, and this book deserves its props. Like, it's a really well-written book. Like, it kind of was slow paced, but it was just very different from like V.E. Schwab's other writing, and like you can very much tell going from another book to this one. But it just wasn't for me. But it was a really well-written book. Like, I can't lie to you. Book that you push most people to read in 2020. So I would have to say Daily Education or The Inheritance Games. I didn't feel like pulling the other book out of the pile, so I just pulled the special edition from over there because I'm lazy. And I don't have The Inheritance Games with me because my sister has it. She's not reading it, but she has it. But I've been pushing everyone to read it. These also were books that really shocked me this year, but I feel like everyone should read one or the other. My favorite cover of the year would have to be A Deal with the Elf King. I also read this in December. This book is the most beautiful cover I've seen all year. I really like this author's covers, and I do plan to read this book, but the book was $30 and I only gave it like 3 stars. But the book is so beautiful that like I'm still gonna buy it even though I gave it 3 stars. Favorite book to movie adaptation or book to TV show adaptation, and I love Tiny Pretty Things, but I never finished the book, and they're also like 2 separate things. Yes, I Still Love You. I would say that, but the movie just wasn't as good, and I just think that if they put the assassin game scene in it, the movie would have been bomb. Like, obviously I still love P.S. I Still Love You, but I'm gonna have to say Gone Girl because I read Gone Girl for the first time this year, and then I watched the movie, and I actually liked the movie more than the book. I just felt like the book really dragged out, and there are some facts at the end that I was just like, okay girl. But I also think that reading this book is very important because it lets you know how psychotic Amy is. But we stand. We stand, okay? Like, she's crazy, but we love her, okay? The book that made me cry the most is Clap When You Land. Elizabeth Acevedo gets me. Like, she is actually an auto-buy author. Like, she could drop anything and I will buy it. I only own 2 out of 3 of her books, and I'm so excited to see what she writes in 2021 because I know that she never fails me. I really do prefer her books that are written in verse though. This book is basically about this girl whose father dies in a plane crash, and then she ends up finding out that she has another sister, and you follow these 2 girls and their own life separate, and then them meeting each other and them dealing with their father. And I just love this book so much. This author, Elizabeth Acevedo, is so amazing to the point where even her acknowledgments had me in tears. Who does it like that? No one. So the next question is, what booklet made you laugh the most? And for this one, I would have to say You Deserve Each Other. I could not stop laughing at this book. Whenever I talk about funny books, it's always this one. You Deserve Each Other is basically a romance novel, and it is about a couple who they kind of aren't getting along. They're engaged and they're about to be married soon, and they kind of like are falling out of love with each other, but nobody wants to cancel it because they kind of have this deal with whoever cancels it first has to pay off the wedding, and nobody wants to do that. So you follow them falling back into love with each other, and I just thought it was so funny because these characters are really pushing each other's buttons. Like, that is one thing I really enjoy about this book. And I thought that the love interest was so funny. Like, he was so mean to her, but in a way that, like, if I would ever be in a relationship, like, I would like that because I'm just a naturally mean person to my friends, but they know that it's just out of good spirit. And, like, that's kind of what he reminded me of. But he was really testing her, and they were testing each other, and I just thought that this book was, like, hilarious. Favorite author you discovered this year, and to be honest, it takes a lot for me to have a new favorite author. I don't have one. Like, a lot of people would think that my favorite author would be Holly Black because I love the Cruel Prince series, but it's not. I have to read 3 separate books and give them all 5 stars for it to be a favorite author. Even with Elizabeth Acevedo, she's not really my favorite author because I only gave 2 books of hers so far 5 stars. So I'm just really picky with what I call my favorites because I don't want people to be like, you know how like when you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh, what's your favorite book? You know, like I want to be able to like read 3 books from this author, like any 3 books, and you will love it, you know? Guilty pleasure read of the year. I personally don't believe in guilty pleasures because I like what I like, and you're not gonna make me feel bad for liking it. But I will say it will have to be Ruthless Nights because this book or Credence, they both question my morals. Ruthless Night is a sequel to this book called Cruel Prince. It is not the same thing as The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. It's called Cruel Prince by AJ, and it is basically a high school bully romance because I love my high school bully romances, child. It don't even have to be high school, but they're just typically set in high school. I love my bully romances, okay? And so this one is basically about this girl, and she comes back to town, and something happened with they were like childhood best friends. It's childhood best friends enemies to lovers, which is like my favorite trope. She ends up moving back into this town, and the guy that she's best friends with is mean to her now, and he has his brother. So Ruthless Night follows the brother of the guy, so like that romance already happens. But Ruthless Night was so good. Like, I love the main female character in this book. She was so strong. She was out here punching bitches. She really pushed the normal, but I feel like if any person with actual morals read this book, they would be like, what the fuck? They would be like, what is going on in your head? Same with Credence. Anyone with morals should not be reading Penelope Douglas. Like, that just has to be said. If you have morals, do not read Penelope Douglas. Like, she is not the author for you, babes. I don't have them, obviously. So Credence was about this girl who goes to live with this guy who's like not really her uncle, but I guess he kind of is. But she doesn't know, she didn't grow up with him, she doesn't know him, and then she ends up falling in love with like his sons. Explain it out loud. No words. I have no words, and I have nothing to say for myself for that. So I can't explain myself. So the next question is, favorite book you reread this year? And I only reread 2 books this year. I'm really not that good at rereading, so a thing for 2021 is to reread books, because I'm always focused on the next book to read and getting my TBR lower instead of rereading books that make me happy. I don't know who out there in the universe hates me, but my camera just died. The next question is, what's the best nonfiction book you read this year? And I don't typically read nonfiction. I read to get away from the real world, and so that's why I read fiction. I do want to get into reading nonfiction. And then the last question is, are you happy with this reading year? And I am so proud of myself. I read 200 books this year. I just want to thank the friends that I don't have, the boyfriend that I don't have, and the places that I don't go, because if it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't have been able to read 200 books this year. So thank you. That's it for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you made it to this point, comment a spaceship, because your girl is obsessed with space. So comment a spaceship, and then I'll see you guys in the next video.